My name is Rahana and I am on the Success team. We'll focus on RAMP's Universal CSV connection today, covering the following items: how to import your chart of accounts to RAMP, how to import additional fields to RAMP, such as your class list or your vendor list, how to code your transactions, how to export your transactions to your accounting provider from RAMP, the difference between a CSV export versus a journal entries export, and lastly, how to download your receipts from your Transactions tab. So we'll go ahead and start by navigating over to the Accounting tab on the left-hand navigation bar. So I'll share my screen now and we can walk through it together. As I mentioned, we're going to go over to this Accounting tab on the left-hand navigation bar. So now that we're all on the same page, let's go on ahead and click on Get Started here. You'll also notice that a window will pop up on the right-hand side here. So what you'll want to do is go to this Other Providers section, click on Search for your provider, and type in your accounting provider's name. If you see your provider's logo after you typed it in, make sure to click on it. For example, if I type in French, you'll notice how the logo has popped up and you can click right into it. If you do not see your company's or your provider's logo, you can click on the hyperlink after typing it in. For example, if I type in AWS, you'll notice that there is no logo, but you can still click into this hyperlink. So we'll go ahead and do that. Also, before we import your chart of accounts and any additional fields, we do require you to create a RAMP liability account within your accounting provider. So a best practice here is typically keeping the name of this liability account to a RAMP card. This liability account is usually a credit card type. So given that information, we'll go ahead and import your chart of accounts now. So we'll click into Import Chart of Accounts, and then this will populate on the right-hand side. Now we'll click on Download Template as a part of the first step. And let's go ahead and open this template. So this template's format here is actually very crucial to importing your chart of accounts. And you'll notice that the same template is being used to import your additional fields later on, as well as your vendors. So we'll go ahead and fill out this template with the segment ID over here, which reflects your account codes. And then we'll also add in the name, which reflects your category or descriptions from your chart of accounts. So I have my accounts code here that I could just copy and paste into this template like so. And I'll do the same thing with my categories. All right. So then we'll go ahead and save that. All right, and we'll save it to an easy to access area. All right, so now that we have filled out the fields here, we'll want to upload this template to RAMP by clicking right to the second step. So we'll click on upload and we'll be able to pull in our chart of accounts. So once your chart of accounts is in RAMP, it'll show like this. If there are any duplicates, it'll be flagged here on the bottom in a bright orange color, and it'll let you know exactly what fields will show as duplicates. So everything looks fine here, so we'll go ahead and click Save and Continue. Now we'll go ahead and upload our vendor into RAMP. So as I mentioned earlier, It'll be the same template once you click on Download Template. I do have an example of some vendors already filled out, so I'll go ahead and click on Upload, and I will pull in my vendors. So similar to your chart of accounts, you'll notice how it populated over here, and if all looks well, we'll click Save and Continue. All right, so now we have our chart of accounts as well as our vendors already within RAMP. We'll go ahead and click on Import Additional Fields if we have any other additional fields that we would like to use for coding purposes. So now you'll notice that this window to the right popped up. What you want to do here is name your field. So for my example today, we'll be naming this Locations. My business has a couple of locations, and each store is in a different area, and I would love to code by locations. So now that we've named it, we'll move on to step 2, which is to choose a field type. Single select mode provides a drop-down of options, whereas a text field provides a single line of freehand text. Since I have a few locations I do want my employees to choose from, I'll go ahead and go with the drop-down option. Also, we'll want to toggle on required for export if you do want this field to be in your CSV export from RAMP over to your accounting provider. This template here will be a download of the same template that we filled out earlier with the segment ID reflecting the account codes and the descriptions under the name column. I already have an example filled out, so I'll go ahead and upload that in. So here you'll see all of my store locations as well as the account codes associated with them have populated on this list. We'll go ahead and click Save, as this is the only additional field I like to add. If you like to add any other additional fields, you could always click Save and add an additional field. So we'll go ahead and click Save here. And now we have this extra field over here that we can also code by. Also, if you see these green check marks, this indicates that you have successfully uploaded your chart of accounts as well as all these other fields here. So in order to now complete the accounting setup, we'll go ahead and click on Start Coding Expenses here, and we must now configure to export, which is connecting all of your default accounts here. So let's go on ahead and configure to export. We'll go ahead and click on the button here, and this will open this window over here to the right-hand side. So here we'll just be asking for a couple of accounts for you to connect to. The first one being your liability account that we want you to create earlier. So as a best practice, we discussed naming this liability account RAM card, and this is the account name that you'll place here, and then the account ID associated with your liability account. Now we'll continue scrolling down over to the reimbursements account section. Here, you'll want to name your cash account as well as place the ID number associated with this bank account that you have connected to RAM. So we'll go ahead in our cash account, put the name of operating account, because in my accounting provider system, this is how I have my bank account listed. And we'll also put in the coding associated with this account. Next, we'll go ahead and add an accounts payable account for your RAMP reimbursements to map on over to. So we'll go ahead and put the account ID associated with that as well. And lastly, for bill pay, we'll go ahead and select a bank account that is associated with RAMP already, and then we'll put in the same information from our operating account, like so, here. All right. And then the last step is to add also an accounts payable for the RAMP bills to post to. So we'll go ahead and click on these options listed here. right. Once you've completed that, we'll go ahead and click Save Changes here. And now you'll notice that this button here no longer says Configure to Export as we've completed that, and now it says only Export. So we have now successfully completed the accounting setup, and we're going to go ahead and walk through how to code your transactions. So when looking at your accounting tab here, you'll notice that all the transactions that do not have a category filled out, they will be highlighted here in red. In order to mark the transactions as ready to export over, all areas that's filled with this required area will be needed to be filled out in order to go ahead and mark it as ready. So you can do this by actually clicking on this drop down here, and you'll go ahead and select the proper values here by typing to search. You could always scroll, but your chart of accounts might be a bit more lengthier than what I have here today, so typing to search will save you lots of time. For example, if I type in meals, it'll populate like this. So this transaction, I'll go ahead and map this to meals, and then I'll map it to a specific location for one of my stores. So we'll do Dumbo here. You also may have noticed that this blurb has popped up the moment I coded this transaction. This is actually asking if you'd like to create a merchant rule. One of the ways that RAMP really allows you to close your books faster is by automating your accounting. So we'll do that by offering the ability to set up accounting rules so that you can code transactions in bulk, and these little reminders are just the beginning of it. So here we're going to click Dismiss for now and explore all the different rules that you can set. So we'll click on Create Rules, and here we'll click on Show More Options. You'll notice that there's a couple of different rules that you can set up here. So the merchant rule, this is based off the vendor from the transaction. You'll be able to set a merchant rule based off of the merchant if it's always the same thing. So for example, if I were to set a merchant rule for Pine State biscuits, every time it comes in as a transaction, it'll always get mapped over to meals. Now, if we set a category rule, this is the most broad rule that we have. A category rule refers to Visa's MCC codes because we're on the Visa network, and this is essentially how a business identifies itself with Visa. So you'll notice the term RAMP category within RAMP quite often, and that refers to this category here. So Pine State Biscuits identifies as a restaurant, and therefore that is their category. So if you were to set a category rule for meals, going forward, anytime restaurants comes through as a category, it'll automatically get mapped over to meals. You can also set up rules on the department and the location level to get a bit more granular. And lastly, the most granular one would be your card rules. This you would set on the card level, and it's good for if the transactions will always map to the same category made on this card. For example, if you had a card for LinkedIn, you might want to set a card rule where it always gets mapped over to possibly dues and subscriptions, since that is the only transaction that'll take place on that card. So here, we'll set it on a restaurant level, and we'll click Create Rule. You may also have noticed now that after creating this rule, all other transactions that have a category of restaurants has been automatically coded. And this is how you will save lots of time. So now that we've gone over how to code your transactions, let's walk through how to export them over to your accounting provider. As I mentioned, you cannot mark it as ready until all fields that are required are filled out. So let's go on ahead and fill out a couple more so we could export them. So we'll put this towards Chelsea, and we'll put this transaction towards one of my Harlem stores. So now you'll notice that all three of these transactions, we are able to mark them as ready. Another way that you can mark them in as ready rather than singularly having to click like this is by utilizing these check marks all the way over to the left-hand side. This really helps you bulk mark these so that you can make this process a lot faster. So we'll go ahead and click Mark Ready, and now you'll notice that we'll have 3 transactions ready to export. So the main goal of this entire accounting tab is to be blank, which means that all transactions have to be coded and exported over to your accounting provider. Once you do export a transaction, it will actually disappear from this page, and you don't want any transactions that are uncoded lingering here at the end of your month-end close. So now that we have marked 3 transactions as ready to code, and we mentioned that there are 3 transactions indicated here, and you could click on this export button, which will open one more window review before you go ahead and export everything. So this is where you'll come and review all your transactions before you export it. If you want to edit any transactions, all you have to do is deselect this green checkbox, and it'll take it back to this accounting page. If you ever do want to bring it back because you realize that everything did look well and you did that by mistake, you could always click undo, and it'll bring the transaction back to your review page. So transactions also actually export over fully coded, and there's no need to take any action on the other side. So if you do want to update a transaction after it's been coded, you'll need to do so within your accounting provider, given that RAMP has already passed over that information. So now that we have some transactions that are ready to export, let's go ahead and walk through the 2 different types of exports that you can do. First, we have your export as journal entries option, and this will show you all the fields, including credits and debits of all transactions. The CSV export, you'll click on export as, and you'll choose the CSV option here, and this will show you the credits only and provides a bit more of limited information. So let's go ahead and export these as journal entries, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at both export types. Also, after you make your first export, you'll get a nice little confetti here. All right, so now let's open this CSV export and pull this on over. So here you'll notice that we actually export over quite a lot of information, including the card user that the transaction occurred on, the merchant information, as well as the category that was chosen, the last 4 digits of the card number, and we could keep going down this way for more information. Most importantly, the biggest difference, as I mentioned, is the fact that this export shows you both the debit and credit. So you'll see that here. And all receipts will be provided via a link. So let's go ahead and code a couple more transactions so you can see what it looks like as a CSV export. So let's go ahead and put Grammarly towards dues and subscriptions. Let's put Uber towards travel, and medical we'll put towards dues and subscriptions as well. This Grammarly is for my Chelsea store, and then the rest of these transactions we'll put towards FIDI. So we'll go ahead and mark all of these ready. and we'll wait for our export button here. So we'll click, and now we'll export as a CSV. And now let's drag this on over so you can see what this one looks like. So as you can see, this is a bit more limited. And what we'll show is the fact that it's a credit on a credit card. We'll show your merchant, and we'll only show the credits as well as any other additional fields that, of course, you use to code, as well as your category that you coded by from your chart of accounts. So side by side, this is a bit more of how they look, with the biggest difference being the credits and debits showing on the journal entry side, whereas only the credits show on the CSV side. So now that we've gone through the different types of exports, let's go ahead and look at some key information that we can also find within our accounting tab. So over here, now that we've exported some transactions, you'll notice that an export history popped up. So this export history button, it provides an audit log for all transactions that were exported, and it'll also show who from your team exported those transactions and on what date. If you click into it, it'll show you how many transactions were also synced, and you could always download the CSV again. We also have this nifty little feature that shows you all the missing items. So all you have to do is click on this little bell, and it'll show you all the missing items correlated with the transactions that you're waiting on in order to be ready to sync it on over or export it on over to your accounting provider. We have this nifty little tool here where you can remind people individually by clicking on each one of these, or you could scroll all the way to the bottom and click on Remind All, which will send out a notification to all of these users asking them to submit their missing items. So it does allow you to quickly see what transactions still need information prior to being exported. Another helpful area on this field is this accounting rules tab. So if you click here, this is how you can easily see all merchant category and department rules in one place. And if you click right into it, we'll see that the one rule that we have already made for restaurants, it's right here. So you can go through and set some more rules up, and it'll definitely save you lots of time when it comes to coding your expenses. So now that we've completed this portion, let's go ahead and explore how to enable employee coding and downloading receipts. So let's navigate over to your transactions tab here. Our CSV exports currently only provide the link to receipts, so should you want to export any receipts only for your company records, you can do so within this transactions tab. All you have to do is come into this tab, select the date range that you prefer. So if you want your previous statement period, you could always go ahead and click here. And then you'll see this download button right here over all the way to the right. You'll want to click on this and then click download zip. This option here will send you a zip file via email, and all you'll have to do is click on it, and it'll give you all the PDFs of all the receipts from your transactions from your previous statement period. If you do want your employees to code their own transactions, we could do so by going ahead and clicking on Settings, and then going to Spend Controls, and then going ahead and clicking on Required Fields, and this little scratch pad icon next to General Expenses will take you right to the spot. You'll want to make sure that your accounting is fully connected. That way you can have these fields to make required for your employees to code by. So since we've already successfully connected our accounting, we'll see this accounting category populate, which will be your chart of accounts, and these are the additional fields I've added. If you do want your employees to code by their chart of accounts, you'll go ahead and click required, and you'll have the opportunity here if you want it for a minimum amount or for all transactions. I do want my employees to go ahead and code by location, store location, so I know what transactions belong to what location. So I'll go ahead and require this as well. Once you've done that, you'll just go ahead and click Save Changes. So this was the last item to go over, and now you have successfully connected your accounting. Thank you so much for watching.